I find it easier to connect to nature when in graveyards. See, in most parts of towns and cities, at least most, that have a lot of development, a lot of pavement, a lot of sewage lines, dirt dug up, and very manicured by man and paved over. A lot of developed areas, the spirit of the land goes to sleep. The Land Wight goes to sleep because of the shock of this overdevelopment and this materialization of itself and this reworking of itself against its will. Because most of the time, people don't reach out to the land to ask if they can develop it, to connect to it, to make offerings to it, to talk to it in this very materialistic, not just age, but even with materialistic religions where, you know, God is somewhere else separate and everything here is just material, you know, we can do what we want with it. With that mentality, people doesn't even come to mind to reach out to the land before they develop it, before they make it into something else. So through that spiritual kind of shock, the land goes into slumber psychologically, kind of like a little bit of a coma. Still alive, the land spirit is still there vast majority of the time. It's very hard to kill the spirit of a land, but it goes into slumber out of shock. In graveyards, and it's really hard for these land spirits, Land Wights, they don't innately connect to us or understand us. They know we're there for sure, but they don't innately communicate with us. Their kind of existence and understanding is so much bigger. Their thoughts are slower. Everything moves more slowly for them. They're kind of like a tortoise and we're a bunch of hares. And the spirit of a land lasts thousands and thousands of years. So we seem like kind of like flies would to a human being. They know we're here though. But in graveyards, it's easiest for a Land Wight, the spirit of a land, to understand us. It's a portal into us, because a lot of the time cemeteries they don't have a lot of, you know, sewage underneath, a lot of underdevelopment, or a lot of pavement on top. There would be at least grass and some trees, and it remains that way, relatively the same way, for long periods of time. And when, you know, when our spirits, when the life force from our bodies that we borrowed from the land is going back into the earth, there is a kind of passage of consciousnesses. Whatever consciousness remains around the spirit of the life force, not the soul, but the spirit of the life force going back into earth, whatever consciousness is attached to that passes beside and kind of through the consciousness of the Land Wight. And it's almost like really our different kinds of consciousness can see each other more fully in places like this, can exchange ideas, can seem more like the same thing in this in-between place that are graveyards and cemeteries. We subconsciously make gravestones and kind of the protrusions that we make to mark where our dead lie. We subconsciously make it into kind of the grander soul, Brahman, entering into this realm. We go and we look at gravestones. We look and we think about, you know, death. And we think about passage. We think about the memories that we had with someone. And all of this subconsciously connects to the vaster, grander soul. And, you know, gravestones look a lot like Shiva Lingas, where the Shiva Linga kind of designed, developed from sacrificial poles where animals were sacrificed, but also where spiritual fires, homas in Hinduism, the smoke would basically waft onto the Shiva Linga pole, sacrificial pole, and the pole would be worshipped as a spirit or god, with animal sacrifice, but with spiritual fires. And there's something that remains in the subconscious of humanity, to where, you know, plenty of tribes and clans thousands and thousands of years ago have had sacrificial poles, or poles that they worshipped, poles that they gathered around, poles for various services, various ceremonies. And there's something underneath our regular consciousness that has always liked these protrusions that stick out of the ground, have always connected to the beyond this realm through them, or the deeper essence of this realm rather, through them. So that is why we make gravestones in a very particular way that wouldn't seem strange unless you really think about why we make gravestones the way that we do, and their shape and things like that. But you'll find that a Land Wight can communicate with you through the wind, when you're making offerings, when you're connecting to the spirit of the land and the dead. You might feel very particular kinds of wind from different directions, or like gusts upon your face just caressing you. And you might find that there are more moths and butterflies in the area when you're really connecting to the land or connecting to the dead. You'll also find that you start to innately know where the edges of energy are. It's really hard to say where one Land Wight begins and another and it ends, where it begins and ends, and where another starts. It's hard to tell like exactly where those lines are, but within a Land Wight, there are little fragmentations between the energy along the ground, where water channels through, or where the ground is cracked, or where there's a patch of mud or dirt that is kind of scooped like this. It's almost like the lines in our face, that you don't really notice the lines in our face, or where our mouth, you know, stops and starts, eyes, nose, where those are, unless you really like think about, oh, okay, these are my eyes, this is my nose. But it's very similar for a Land Wight, and you over time you start to see where the little boundaries are between different parts of the Land Wight, and you get to kind of know the features of the spirit of a particular land. And it's, once again, it's easiest to see and easiest to connect to Land Wights in graveyards for a lot of people who aren't around country. And a lot of Land Wights in the country, they don't have the same consciousness relationship that that once again that you can have between human beings and Land Wights in a graveyard, because maybe a land hasn't seen a lot of humans, or the humans haven't really been meditative in a certain spot. Of course, haven't made offerings to it, because very few people would rarely do that, but there's not that intimate connection that you'll find in graveyards. So while a Land Wight in the countryside might be awake, it might be relatively unaware of us, or not really concerned, not really understanding the nature of what we are. And the consciousness of Land Wights is so, since they're so big, and since they're so much a part of the earth, they don't feel an exact separation between them and earth in the same way that we feel from the ground. So there's a number of characteristics of Land Wights and how their consciousness operates, but it's easiest to connect with them and the land and nature itself in graveyards, as I've said. At any rate, I hope this was interesting. It's a bit of a rant video. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps out the channel. Feel free to leave a comment. It also helps out the channel. And share this wherever you like. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. I hope all of you have a wonderful day.